Hello. Today I'll be presenting my A-push topic, which is the Spanish flu that I chose. And so this loads. All right. So what exactly happened? The Spanish flu, also known as the influenza epidemic or pandemic, is basically the outbreak of the influenza A virus, which is a pandemic class virus. Even to this day, such as just like COVID, it is known as the second most devastating epidemic that we had since the epidemic, also known as the Black Plague. I apologize if I'm speaking fast. By the way, I'm trying to fit everything into this 5 minute schedule time that's allotted. And so basically. It cleaned it basically there's no known area or place of origin. Now you might be thinking, but Josh, it's known as the Spanish flu, so Spain, it must have originated in Spain. Not exactly. Basically, the Spanish flu came to be. It started during the early 19, as we know, by the end towards the end of World War I, which is May 1918, or in the year of 1918. And as I said, there's no exact location. And so this means that within the world, it's said to be either, historians argue, could be either within the trenches of World War I, where many soldiers gathered in an unsanitary situation, or in other nations such as China, where the first outbreaks have been reported in the modern day or historically. But back then, it was known as the Spanish flu because Spain, which was a neutral nation, so it did not participate in World War I, started reporting their numbers due to the disease, and therefore, unlike the other nations such as the U.S. or China or any other nation that was involved, couldn't really say their numbers because that would show weakness within the nation as they have been affected. They all teamed up together and named it after Spain, who openly reported the numbers now, which is known as the Spanish flu. And worldwide, it is known to have taken 50 million lives, and over 500 million people were affected by the flu, either sick or affected. And that's a big clue as to why this is not really mentioned in U.S. history and in world history. And so, how did it affect the U.S.? It took over 675,000 lives, and originally the pandemic was shown to be from affected or spread from military personnel, which who came from, again, from World War I, and economically, it initially cost us over 166 billion dollars, and in the long term history, it cost us over $200 billion within the economic revenue. Socially, it caused a slight mass, or as we see in a graph, we could look at the mental health graph. We see a slight rise in mental health issues, and a major event which correlates, which we could argue that this should be presented in U.S. history, would be the Philadelphia event with the Liberty Loan Parade. As World War I came to an end, many people wanted to celebrate this, and thus, as officials, we knew that there was a flu going on. Officials simply wrote it off at the time, and health organizations, that it was just a form of the common flu outbreak, and thus the Liberty Loan Parade took place. And within just 10 days after the parade, almost 1,000 lives were lost. And 1,000 lives were lost, and we see an improvement, though. However, with the situation within St. Louis, Missouri, and San Francisco, which learning from the parade enforced strict laws of quarantine, and even San Francisco charged $5 at the time, a huge amount, almost $50 to $28 at today's money, which said if one disrupts public peace and fails to equip a mask, we they will be charged or fined with $5. Something we could learn today with COVID. And my comparison event would be that we learned this year with the Great Depression and the sand dust storms. Now, I say this because during the Great Depression, as we know, many people themselves were isolated. Just like within the pandemic, within the influenza pandemic, people quarantined for a health reason. However, here, people quarantined just so they could preserve themselves. We see families and loved ones separating, trying to focus on their own thing, especially with the sandstorms. People were doing their own thing. They wanted to find a job, and thus there was less social gatherings and much more emphasis on an economic poverty, which forced people to go out and individually, which I'll show a picture with two men competing, constantly looking for a job shortage, which we also see even during the influenza pandemic. As we see here, people there's job shortages coming from small businesses during the influenza pandemic as well as the Great Depression, where people, especially in the Great Depression due to the stock market crash, both people are trying to get jobs because small businesses are shutting down from the value falling, as well as people's overall people running out of jobs, and thus we see an isolation and a rise in mental health issues from both the